Hi, it's Quainey here. Every time I make a video about slavery, I get comments about why don't you talk about the Barbary pirates or why don't you talk about white slavery. So let's do that. Let's talk about white slavery.
Hi, my name is Daniela Sasha and I am from Ohrid, Macedonia.
Hi, my name is Jenita and I am from Serbia.
Hi, my name is Linda and I'm from Slovakia.
My name is Marina and I'm from Kyiv, Ukraine.
Hi, my name is Antoinetta and I'm from Plovdiv, Bulgaria.
So why have I started with these women? These women are all Slavic women. They're Slavs. The term that gave us the word slaves. Some of the Slavic people pronounce Slavs as slaves and Slavic people. I've seen this on videos on YouTube. So they even say the word slaves when they talk about themselves. Why is that? Well, for thousands of years, Eastern Europe was a hunting ground for many empires for slaves. The Persians, the Romans, the Arabs, the Ottomans, all of them enslaved Slavic people. Yet, when we mention the word slavery, we automatically think about Africans and black people. That is on purpose. That is by design. I was born in London, England. And whilst growing up as a black boy, I only associated the history of black people with slavery and nothing else. Because that is all I saw of black people in history. When I watched films, when I read certain books, when I saw paintings in galleries which the school took us to, all I saw were images of black people as slaves. I never saw images of white people as slaves. So, and this was done, as I said, by design. Little did I know when I was a child and seeing these films that I was actually watching slaves. This woman is a slave. She is in a harem and she is a concubine. A concubine is a sex slave, a slave to the master for his sexual gratification. Many of the women in Eastern Europe were bought for this purpose. Domestic servants, sex slaves, and wives in harems. Little did I know whilst innocently watching these films that I was actually looking at two women who were slaves in this scene. But my mind had been programmed to think that only the black woman was the slave. African women, black women in Ottoman, Arab times were used normally as domestic servants, whereas the white Slavic women were usually used for sex and to bear children. But sometimes African women were also wives and used as sex slaves and to bear children. But they were mostly used for domestic purposes to look after the women in the harem. Hollywood had certain rules in movie making, and one of those rules, one of the codes, was to never show a black person owning a white person as a slave. This was part of the white supremacy of making black people believe that slavery was their one and only contribution to the human race. Ottoman and Arab slavery was brutal, but we were never shown that. We were never shown the brutality. We were shown what I showed you, the beautifulness, the silk gowns, the prettiness of it all. But when it came to showing us African slavery, we were shown the brutality of it. And that was reinforced. And that is what we were all taught to believe Africans were only fit for. That they had no history apart from being slaves to other people. The Western powers that were involved in the transatlantic slave trade did not want their slaves to know that these kind of people, white people, Europeans, were also being enslaved at exactly the same time in the East. They wanted the enslaved Africans to believe that Europeans were better than them, they were superior to them. And so this history has been kept away from us. It's it was never taught in school. I was never taught about the extent to the slavery in Eastern Europe. And that extent goes back to the Persian Empire. The Persians, the Romans, the Ottomans, the Arabs, all of them dealt in these people, male and female. The males were also usually taken by the Ottomans. They were taken and put into armies. They were taken as boys. Ottomans would raid villages in Eastern Europe and take boys away to go into the army. They were called Janissaries. The Arabs also castrated the men or boys, as well as they castrated the African men. But the Slavic men didn't survive it as well as the African men. So soon castration only was done to African men and not to the European men. Now, the enslaving of these people was so proliferant, sorry for my pronunciation, that it changed the complexion of North Africa. So many of these women were brought into North Africa to be wives and sex slaves, that they gave birth to children that has helped develop the North African complexion we see now. Arabs did not look how they look now. Some Arabs, when you look at them, look like white people because of the mixing of the DNA between the original Arabs and the Southeastern Europeans, the Slavic people. Now, these Slavic people were a shame to Western Europe. Europe was once the Roman Empire, yes, and it split between the East and the West. Western Europe, once it developed again, became the Catholic Church, looked down upon the East. It looked down upon the East. So when Western Europe expanded into the new world and spread this white superiority myth, they had to keep away what had been going on in Eastern Europe and what was still going on in Eastern Europe to white European people who were being enslaved by Arabs and by Muslims, and Muslims meaning black and white people, enslaving men and women. As I said, the boys were taken into the army. If they survived after so many years, they could go back to their village. But of course, they would more than likely be killed, and the women were used as sex slaves. So, therefore, changing the complexion of North Africa. The African men who were castrated were usually the ones who guarded these women in the harems. Because they were castrated, they couldn't have sex with the women. That was another reason for castrating them. And a reason for choosing black men to guard the women, which we do see in the films. We always see a black slave guarding these women in these harems. A reason for choosing them was sometimes castration didn't work, and the body grew back. And if one of your sex slaves or wives had sex with one of these black men, and she had a mixed race child, you would know that child was not yours. That was another reason for using black men in the harems. We have all been so submerged in this lie of slavery, meaning Africa, that I saw a video with an Eastern European woman on a train arguing with a black man, and she told him, "Shut up, my people used to own you, you were my slave." That's what she said to him. And I was wishing I was on that train, because I would have told her, no, it was the other way around. You were the slaves to Moors, to Muslims, to people who look like me. So sit down and shut up. So if you're enslaving and colonizing Africans, you could not let it get out that there were Africans who actually bought Europeans. Yeah, you could not let that get out. It would diminish your power over them. Imagine if your slaves knew that you were not the be-all and end-all superior person overlooking them. You were actually someone who was just like them, and someone whose past also had slavery, but in reverse. You couldn't let that out. That's why European slavery has never really been taught in schools. It's never really been shown in films. You've never seen a film where black people are owning white people and treating them atrociously. You've never seen it, but it did happen. I made a video showing a slave auction of women like this in the Ottoman Empire, and I put it on YouTube. It was taken down straight away. But if that was black women in that video, you know that video would still be seen today.